Art is a weird one. I think you have to front load a lot of it. You have to put in a lot of time and effort and money to begin with in order to see the payoff. But I think a lot of businesses are like that. I think, banks don't often require profit from a business for a business loan for a couple of years, So, and if you look at sort of startup methodology, they'll run at a loss for a couple of years because they have the trust that eventually they will start turning a profit. And I think it's the same as a professional artist. If you're starting out, that you can't necessarily see the returns straight away because you have to put all this investment into building your profile, getting a collection together, like getting 20 pieces of work together. That costs money, that costs time, that's materials.
My name is Sonia Small here. I'm an artist, art coach, and course creator. When I graduated from the Art Academy, I had learned how to paint and how to draw, but I had no idea how to earn a living with my creativity. I was not prepared for the life as a working artist. This often left me quite frustrated, sometimes on the verge of calling it quits, throwing away my brushes and giving it all up. But I'm so glad I didn't. After many failed attempts and valuable lessons learned, I've discovered ways to turn my creativity into a profession, now giving me the freedom to live the life I love. I created the Help I'm Artist podcast because no matter where you are on your journey, whether you're just starting out or maybe you've been a working artist for a while, you too can take steps to turn your creative passions into a meaningful, sustainable profession. The Help I'm Artist podcast is filled with fresh inspiration, practical tips, and interviews with artists who are experts in their field. If you're a smart artist or one in the making who's looking for new and exciting ways to get your art out of your studio and into the hands and hearts of an audience that's appreciative and willing to pay what it's worth, then you're in the right place. Happy listening. In today's episode, I'm chatting to UK artist Mish Maudlsey, aka Mishfit. Mishfit occupies that exciting space between street art and fine art painting, creating striking and color-drenched artworks from her studio in Brighton. Let's take a listen to what inspires her and what steps she's taking to build her art practice. Well, Mish, welcome to the Help I'm Artist podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you?
Yeah, sure. I'm based in Brighton, which is on the south coast of the UK. My name is Mish Maudlsey, also known in the art world as Mishfit, and I am a contemporary urban artist. So that means I create work on the street as murals, and also more fine art based work like the canvas behind me, which combines spray paint and oil paints to kind of have a nice sort of contrast between traditional painting methods and a more sort of contemporary urban edge.
Oh, we're definitely going to be diving in a little bit more about what inspires you and motivates you to get up and go to your studio and make your art. But is it something that you're always wanting to do? Is it always something that you knew, I'm going to be an artist? How was that journey for you?
Absolutely, always. I always wonder if it's something to do with being an only child, but I was always drawing as a kid. I'd take cartoons, video them, stop, like freeze frame the video, and then just draw from the TV. So it was like the TV was my light box kind of thing. I just did that for years and years, and almost without really thinking about it, not really realizing that that meant I was an artist. But it's always been my primary go-to hobby, what I do to relax, what I did to chill out as a kid, what I did to entertain myself. So I guess from the very, very beginning, there's loads of paintings of me as a kid in an apron and a little easel and stuff. So absolutely always been an artist and never had a problem with calling myself an artist either. That's always felt very obvious to me that I was an artist. Whether I was an artist that could make money at it or as a hobby, that's two different things in my mind at least. But yeah, from the word go, always have been.
Yeah. And how did you prepare yourself? Like, how was that journey from, maybe high school? Did you go and study art? What was your journey to prepare yourself for being an artist?
Sure. I mean, I was quite academic, but also, I was art was one of my massive strengths as well. So right up until A level, there was I did science, but I also did art. And there was a real moment when I was filling out my UCAS form of like, do I go and do microbiology or do I go and do art at university? And it was like a real, talking to my parents and talking to friends. And it just boiled down to, do I want to spend my life in a lab coat or do I want to spend my life in an art studio? And that was just such an obvious answer to that question.
The studio one.
Absolutely. You just got to think about what do you do on a daily basis and how do you want your life to be? And I was just like, no, I don't want to be in a lab. And so that was an easy decision once I'd thought of it in that context. So did A level, then went on to foundation course at Kingston University, which at the time and probably is now very well regarded, like hothouse foundation course. It was like a boot camp, but it was amazing, and it meant we could go to any university we wanted because we were quite well regarded in terms of students. And then I got into the illustration course at Brighton University, which was excellent. And then you're sort of like kicked out at the end, aren't you, without any sort of idea of how to actually do it in the real world. They don't teach you how to negotiate with clients, how to approach galleries, none of it, So I was sort of in a bit of a panic because I had to earn money. I wasn't from a wealthy background. And fortunately in Brighton, where I live, there's a lot of incredibly creative people. And I was in a creative studio. And through what I learned through the people there, I managed to lie my way into my first web design job, having a bit of, software experience from my degree, and the innate ability to draw is what got me the job. I just lied and said I could use all the software, even though I couldn't. And then in one very stressful week, I taught myself how to use, the software that was required at the time. But it was either that or move back home and work in a supermarket. So I feel very fortunate that I managed to do that and suddenly was on quite a good wage for a graduate. And that set me up for a career in web design, which I still do. I'm still a freelance web designer, like almost 18 years on. So I feel very fortunate that university gave me both those career paths, a digital designer and also an artist.
Yeah, and I'm sure that helped you just learning to look and see in the aesthetics of web designing, of designing in the whole broad sense for what
Absolutely.
You're doing and also your journey after that. Because I know that you were an avid or are an avid urban artist. Outside wall, give Mish a wall and she'll fill it with something beautiful. How did that journey continue for you, getting into that space?
Sure. I think the seed was planted at university when I did my dissertation on graphic activism, and it just blew my mind, just suddenly learning about all these different organizations and movements, straight from counterculture in the 60s onwards, like the Guerrilla Girls, Adbusters, all these kind of inspirational, radical sort of art organizations or collectives that were challenging, the norms and challenging governments and challenging political stances. And I just thought that was so powerful and so incredible, and started sort of getting switched on to street art because of that, I think. And then outside of uni, meeting street artists and actually hanging out with them and creating with them and going out at night with marker pens when you're in a club, just like doodling on toilet doors, like blatant vandalism, but they were all covered already, all in graffiti. So I was just adding to it. But my work was always quite, my work was always quite positive. They were like cute figures or little robots with like saying really nice, cute little sayings. So I felt like I was making someone's evening better. And actually still now there's a pub that still has one of these really old doodles of mine that they've preserved. They've painted everything else out. They painted around my little Mishfit doodle and kept it there. That's really lovely. So I got into street art through that, basically, after leaving university, very naturally falling into it because it was a way to practice my craft wherever I was, and people could see it. You're not relying on a gallery to accept your work. You're just out on the street kind of making someone's day brighter by creating these little moments where they stop and look and think and maybe make them smile. And that was always really important to me.
Okay, so that connection with an audience, actually interacting with your art and giving it a place where people can see it, literally not having to come into a gallery, but being in a public space,
And I
having
think
that
that's
conversation.
yeah, that's what's really sort of important about street art. It's very egalitarian, you know, it's for everybody, and it connects with a lot of people that would never go to a gallery. And that's something that's become more and more apparent to me as you're painting on the street. These conversations you have with people, they're like, that's proper art, that is, you know, and like they may never have gone to the Tate or gone, you know, just it's a real leveler, I think, being able to get your work outside and take it to people rather than waiting for people to come into a gallery.
Mm. I know this is something you still do, but you have combined it with a fine art career. So the web designer, urban street artist meets fine artist. How does that all fit together?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I was asking myself that for a long time as well, because as much as I was in the street art world, I did sort of find it, or begin to find it, quite restrictive in a way. And maybe this was all in my own mind, I don't know, but, you know, it felt like there was a certain pressure to create work of a certain style, you know, otherwise it wasn't deemed sort of street art or whatever. And I just felt quite constrained by the certain materials I was using and the certain style that I could achieve with those materials. And also a few other issues as well, you know, just like there's a lot of ego. I was always like the only girl at paint jams or the only girl at these exhibitions that I was in. And now looking back, now I'm more aware about the kind of support I need in order to kind of excel. I realized that as these egos got bigger, I just sort of shrunk and I ended up kind of withdrawing and not really knowing how to behave in this space. So I kind of just stopped painting for a little bit. I had this sort of hiatus really, where I kind of just I couldn't see a way through, I suppose. And every artist I've spoken to that's had a break, they've always come back stronger and more authentically themselves. And this was a chance for me to go, right, well, I don't need to subscribe to any genre of art. I can take my experience from street art, my experience from my traditional painting teaching at uni, and I can combine the two and make something that's uniquely mine and not worry about how it's received or what people think, and just, you know, just do it. And that's the position I've been in the last sort of four or 5 years. And it's incredibly freeing. And but I think it's one of the beautiful things about getting older, is certainly for me anyway, I know everyone is different, but it's with age comes a kind of confidence where you give less of a, you just don't care as much what people think, I guess. And it's very liberating. So so now I'm in this state of combining both disciplines essentially, and hopefully creating work that it has a nice tension between it.
So can you just tell us a little bit about your fine art work? What inspires you? How do you work? We can see a little sneak peek behind you. How would you describe your painting style?
So I'm just addicted to really vibrant colours. So you can see here I'm using little shocks of like neon spray paint to give this kind of real luminosity to it. But I'm also using really premium oil paints, and I'm sort of really into learning more about sort of traditional oil painting techniques. And I just love the clash of those two disciplines. I'm always interested in crossovers where things from different genres or different disciplines merge in the middle, because I think something always really interesting happens. I've always painted fairly strong female figures in my work. And during my hiatus, I was like, oh, I kind of need a bit of a break from that. So I just started instinctively painting clouds, because they're really freeform. Sometimes they're really colourful and sometimes they're not. And they just gave me this beautiful platform to play. So I was painting purely cloud-based work for a couple of years. And then I was drawn back to introducing figurative elements into this cloud-based work. And the reception of this has been amazing, and realizing that the colors and the cloud formations are actually echoing how people are feeling. And I realized that this is actually a device that's used in literature, in painting throughout history. It's called pathetic fallacy, you know, where a character is looking out the window and they're crying, and there's a storm raging outside. The elements are reflecting a person's emotion. And that's essentially what I'm doing in these new works that I've been working on the last couple of years, is reflecting human emotion and human experience through the combination of these figurative elements and the cloudscapes that envelop them. And they become these quite dreamlike, you know, luminous spaces where you can sort of lose yourself and feel what you're feeling. You know, people always sort of feel a resonance with my paintings, and they reflect how they're feeling inside.
And Mish, when you are working, is it the process that makes you just so, fulfilled and happy, or do you have that thought to your audience, how it's going to resonate, or is your paint for someone specific? Are you working in a collection for a exhibition? How does your sort of art life work? What motivates you to make your work?
Well, I mean, it's a big quest, isn't it? The kind of quest for motivation and keeping that creative flame burning. I always see it as like a fire that you need to kind of feed. You need to feed this furnace to keep it burning, but also you need sort of a real organizational structure around it. And realizing that working in collections, and only realizing this quite recently, has been a massive help for me, because it gets rid of all the kind of decision paralysis that would just stop me, because it constantly coming out with thousands of ideas and it almost becomes too much. But if you're working on a collection where you've decided on a concept, it just makes everything really calm and you can just work within that collection. So that's been a real discipline change for me, which has made a massive difference. In terms of the actual inspiration to paint, I just love paint, like the actual physical properties of it and the fact that you can manipulate it to make people feel a certain way. I just think it's like an alchemy, it's a magic, and it's I just have like a real childlike glee when I'm painting. And that, in that very sort of personal relationship between me and the paint and the canvas, and that kind of almost like quite selfish, you're shutting out the world and you're just there playing and doing exactly what you want, is amazing. But then on another level, knowing that people will look at this work and it will mean something to them. It will either mean the same thing as it does to you or something different entirely. And I love that discussion, like listening to people talk about your work and how they interpret it and what it means to them is just, it's magical. I love it. And also being an introvert and being like, I was the proper shy kid when I was little. And I battle with that now as an adult as well. Painting is an incredible form of self-expression where this is why I think I'm drawn to really bright colours as well, is you can make a massive statement without saying a word. You just like beaver away on this painting and then just put it in a room and just let it do the talking for you. And that's, that for me is a real powerful way of getting my point across without having to, shout louder.
If you're ready to build a sustainable, recurring income with your art, but you're tired of figuring everything out by yourself, or you have no idea where to start, then I'm excited to tell you about my brand new membership program, Thrive, that has just opened its doors. Thrive is where artists meet, a place where creative hearts who are equally passionate about their art and motivated to grow their art practice come together to see their art dreams come to life. When you join, you'll have access to an ever-growing library of inspirational, motivational, and educational videos, podcasts, resources, coaching and critique sessions, art expert sessions, monthly Q&As, and so much more. For a limited time only, I'm offering you the full Thrive experience, with immediate access to all the modules, the courses, the lessons, the worksheets, the community support, art expert and Q&A sessions for just €27 a month. Head over to www.soniasmallhere.com/thrive to sign up today. I look forward to welcoming you to Thrive. You talk about this fire that you need to keep fueled, this creative fire. How do you manage to stay inspired? Do you have some tips or inspiration that you can share?
Oh, yeah, it's a real tough one. I mean, sometimes it's about taking a break and putting down your brushes, turning your computer off and just going away. I'm a massive travel nut. And before the pandemic, me and my partner, our main priority in life is like, how many holidays can we have a year? And travel's always been a massive part of my life. I'm a global citizen. My mum was Dutch, Australian. My dad was in the Merchant Navy. So both just traveled all their lives. And that's a massive, massive part of my identity, I think. And it's a huge fuel and inspiration for my creativity. Because whenever I come back from a trip, I'm constantly there like a sponge, soaking up new ideas, looking at kind of cultures and religions and myths and the people and the dress of all the different countries you go to. It's just, I find that incredibly inspiring. And then when you come back, you're so invigorated. It really drives my want to paint. So that's one part of it. And then in terms of fueling, you know, your creativity in other ways, it's actually, researching, being open, looking at what other artists are doing, looking at other genres, you know, what's happening in tech, what's happening in fashion, what's happening in design. There's always ideas that you can kind of magpie and take and make your own. You know, again, I'm always interested in like intersection, like where science meets art, or, you know, where fashion meets science, and that there's so much going on in the world that's inspiring. It can almost be a bit too much, but, you know, just keeping up to date with what is happening, I think, is a real important part of keeping your own creative furnace burning.
So being curious and open and reading and looking, and
Absolutely.
not, I'm an artist, this is my genre, and this is everything that I'm interested in.
Yeah, like, and also reading other magazines. Like I read The New Scientist, and that's my go-to rather than art magazines, because there's always something in there about like astrophysics or quantum physics or space, and it's like, oh my God, I can see a painting about that, you know. And I love that sort of inspiration, which is not necessarily an art magazine or an artist talking about something. It's something else out there in the world.
Yeah, so you didn't have to put on your lab coat. You could keep your apron on and still be interested and open to all those influences.
Yeah. And I think this is the important role of an artist. You're like a lens, you know, you sort of take in what's going on around you and you use it to inspire you, and then you create something that, you know, can influence or affect people emotionally. And I see that as a really important role. And that's, again, what motivates me and inspires me to paint.
Mish, I know becoming, you know, you're the web designer and the graphic designer, then venturing into your art, giving that more space, giving that literally more time also in your day and in your week. How has that journey been for you to make that a more, you know, part of your revenue stream, more part of your business? How have you set that up? Do you have like fixed times? You know, how do you juggle all those pieces of, you know, being a sane working artist?
Yeah, I think, again, after my hiatus and coming back and realizing that, you know, I had to make art a priority, or at least give it space, as you say, to kind of exist and progress. I decided to give myself one art day a week out of my working week. So Fridays is now art day. I generally paint at the weekends if I can as well. And that has really, really helped. It's really helped me take it more seriously. It's helped me step into the reality of being a working artist, even if it's just for one day a week, because that really helps, you know, it's like visualizing where you want to be heading.
Yeah. That's why your email says not available on Friday.
Absolutely. And you know what? I was absolutely terrified about telling my clients, and they were all just like, I'm really jealous. I want to do that. Like, no one cared. And they were all really happy for me. So that was a real like life lesson that genuinely people just want you to be doing what you want to do. You know, it's inspiring. Yeah. Also, but another massive part of it was realizing my skill gaps. You know, yes, I can paint, and that's like almost the easy bit. It's everything else that surrounds being an artist, you know, the marketing, the mindset that you need to have. And I realized that it wasn't my work that was holding me back, it was me. And doing a lot of work around that was really important. Hence, you know, doing your working artist course, which was like a really amazing pivotal step for me in realizing where I needed to skill up, you know, and setting goals for the future. So a lot of it is that, you know, realizing the work you need to do on yourself in order to try and make it work. It's a really strange industry. It's not a meritocracy. It's not based on how good you are. And realizing that, and that really threw me in my 20s. You know, I didn't get it. I was like, well, my work's as good as this person, but they're getting written about in newspapers. How is that possible? Didn't realize that people were paying for PR, you know. So all these things have been demystified to me in my 30s and 40s, which in my 20s I just was so naive, you know. I just didn't realize. I just thought, oh well, they must be better than me. And just, you know, just wanting to give up. And it's just like, so yeah, really educating myself, realizing my skill gaps and making time for it, and actually investing money in it. That's been a big part. You know, actually paying for coaching, paying for mentoring, paying for art fairs because I realised I could see a way through by doing art fairs in London. I can't wait to get to a point where these big galleries will consider me. I need to force my way in. And so by doing art fairs, that's one way to get a lot of visibility. So that was like a strategic decision on my behalf. Yeah.
What other things have you put into place to get that exposure?
So I've been grappling with learning about press, pitching to press, and it doesn't come naturally. I'm finding it quite difficult. It's bringing up a lot of like, oh, why would anyone even care kind of feelings for me. But I'm just sticking with it. You know, the writing side of it is kind of the fun bit. It's the actual like finding the contacts and actually just mustering the bravery to pitch an article to journalists, essentially. So I've got a long way to go with that, but it's a discipline that I'm working on, because if you get an article, the amplification of the amount of people that see it is huge.
Yeah, exponential.
Versus, you know, who sees your Instagram post. And as we all know, the Instagram algorithm is forever changing, and people's business models are being kind of brutalized because of it. So you can't just rely on social platforms. You have to use a multi-level approach. So art fairs are amazing. They're expensive. They're a risk. But so far that risk has paid off. And just forcing myself I've got a solo show coming up in November, a month after the art fair. It's like, why am I doing this? This schedule is insane. And I keep thinking, oh, should I move it? Should I cancel it? My mantra at the minute is like progress, not perfection. So I think, yes, it's going to be a really intense couple of months, but the opportunities that will arise by doing those two events back to back, the momentum it will create will be huge, and it should push me into next year. So I'm just being really brave. I think I'm pushing myself in terms of what I think is possible at the minute. And again, that's a mindset thing. Yeah. I might fall flat on my face, who knows? But again, what's the worst? No, I'm not going to die, am I? It's fine. So just taking those risks and having fun with it. Be like, right, what other crazy idea can I come up with?
Doing your art, wonderful, but to actually earn a living with your art, actually earn money, you're actually asking money for that, for what you're doing. How's that journey been for you as far as making revenue with your art?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not at a point where I could go full time at the minute, but I think last year I made between a third and a quarter of my annual income from my paintings, which isn't huge, but it's also quite a big landmark for me. It's like, okay, and I made more money than the previous year, so I can see a return on my investment, as it were, in terms of my time and my financial investment that I've put into my art business. So also, I think art is a weird one. I think you have to front load a lot of it. You have to put in a lot of time and effort and money to begin with in order to see the payoff. But I think a lot of businesses are like that. I think, banks don't often require profit from a business loan for a couple of years, So, and if you look at sort of startup methodology, they'll run at a loss for a couple of years because they have the trust that eventually they will start turning a profit. And I think it's the same as a professional artist. If you're starting out, that you can't necessarily see the returns straight away because you have to put all this investment into building your profile, getting a collection together, like getting 20 pieces of work together. That costs money, that costs time, that's materials. So I am aware that I'm front loading at the minute, but I have my goal that I would like to at least be 50-50 in the next 2 years in terms of my income. So yeah, it's heading in the right direction.
And there's growth. You see that your art could support you, the more you're being able to put into it. So there's going to be that shift and change over from your other activities. Yeah, then you can put more and more time in. And I think this is really encouraging for people that have other work, other jobs, but wanting to make their art. They think, it's not all or nothing. You don't have to do it full time to be an artist. It doesn't make you less of an artist if you do it every Friday. It's more like putting in the work, making it, giving it time and doing it consistently so that you can get the work done, and then creating an opportunity for people to interact and to see it.
And I think if you actually chat to full-time artists, a lot of them do have other jobs they just don't talk about them much. Again, this is all about this smoke and mirrors of how people are perceived versus the reality. Yeah, a lot of artists have second, third jobs because the reality is it is tricky. And like freelance, you'll have periods of feast and periods of famine. So you need something to fall back on.
Now that's all for this week. If you want that extra support in making, marketing, and building a business around your creativity, then you're welcome to join me and a wonderful group of artists from around the world in Thrive. For a limited time only, I'm offering you the full Thrive experience with immediate access to all the modules, the courses, the lessons, the worksheets, the community support, art expert and Q&A sessions for just €27 per month. Head over to www.sonjasmallhere.com/thrive to find out more. And if you don't ever want to miss an episode, then you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to this episode. And leave a review, as this will make the podcast more visible and easier for other artists to find it. Thanks for that. Have an amazing week, and I look forward to connecting with you next time. Until then.